Here we go. Welcome, everyone. This is Parasha Korah. We've missed a couple of weeks. We are back, and this will be our penultimate class. Next week will be the ultimate with Chukat, and then after that, there won't be many classes for a while. But we're in the midst of Bamidbar. We've missed a few classes because of all sorts of things, and we are going to go right into Korah, which is, I want to say it's an amazing parsha. I find it very complicated. It's if you get too involved in this parsha, it'll depress you. But much of the book of Bamidbar is depressing. So I'm going to, unlike previous classes where I do a lot of video and a lot of other things, there won't be a lot of that today. In fact, no videos. It'll be mostly analysis of text and questions. I think we'll have opportunity for more kinds of discussion than I've had in the last while. So let's go right into it. I'm going to share the screen, and here we go. Sorry, 1 second. It always does this wrong. Here we go. There we go. I'm calling this 10 questions about Korah. Okay. So, one of the questions that I could start off with, which I didn't include here, is what's the context of this story? The context of the story is we've just had this terrible episode of the spies. As you recall, Moses dispatched 12 spies to the land. 10 of them come back with a rather ominous report. 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, say, no, we can do it. The people get all upset. And at the end, after a series of, intercessions and threats to annihilate the people and a plague and a catastrophe, the people end up being reconciled to their fate of having to wander in the desert for 40 years. Reconciled is a strong word. I'm not sure they have reconciled to that fate. But it's precisely at this moment, the moment of demoralization that the Korah emerges. Just 2 seconds, so you have this sense that he is taking advantage of a situation. Moses has responded to this insurrection, this terrible challenge, but it's not a great moment in Moses's life right now. In fact, we could say that we're almost at the bottom. He has a little more to go. I think the moment where he smashes the rock, that's pretty much the bottom. So it's at this moment of low morale, the people that has been sentenced to 40 years of wandering in the desert, there's been a lot of death and a lot of destruction and a lot of, coming to terms with the fact that the people themselves are going to die. And it's precisely in this context that Korah emerges. Vayikach Korah, ben Yitzhar, ben Kehat, ben Levi, v'datan v'aviram b'nei Eliyahu v'mephelah b'nei Reuven. Korah took or betook himself. Exactly what that means, we don't really know, and we're not going to go explore it. But we have here Korah identified as the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kehat, the son of Levi, and we're talking about that in a moment. And also v'datan v'aviram b'nei Eliyahu v'mephelah b'nei Reuven. These are Reubenites and the people of Levi. Scholars on this passage think that there is in fact a fusion of two different rebellions going on here. One which is a rebellion that Korah is making against Moses and Aaron, mostly against Aaron for having the priesthood. And the second is the Tan Aviram of the tribe of Reuben, who are really trying to usurp Moses' authority. The scholars who write on this text seem to focus on the composite nature of the story, that you have these two elements. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to focus on Korah. Okay. ויקומו לפני משה, ואנשים מבני ישראל, 50 ו200 נשיאי עדה, קריאי מועד, אנשי שם. They rise up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. What this tells us is that we have a real crisis here. 250 is a lot. It's a lot of people. That's a mob. That's more than a mob, but it's a mob of people. But it seems, at least, as the way the Torah presents the story, is that there's been, they just don't emerge, out of thin air. In order to get 250 people, men of repute, chosen of the assembly, to come forward, there has to be some kind of discussion. There has to be some kind of organization. There has to be some kind of conspiracy here. And Korah is probably the chief conspirator, probably the chief organizer, and probably someone with a little bit of charisma, or maybe a lot of charisma, and is able to organize around himself a band of people, his Edah, his band of people, and make this petition to Moses, or a demonstration before Moses. It's 250 people. So he is assembling, and I don't want to use too many current examples, but we are all watching Israeli politics very closely right now. So what you have going on at many of the homes of especially the people associated with Naftali Bennett, his party. So the sense of anger from the people on the right against those people in his party is being manifest in manifestation, in demonstrations against them, and there are gangs of people assembled at protesting outside their homes, making life pretty miserable for them, and not only on the right but also on the left. And so, and what we're also witnessing is the warnings that this is a very dangerous time, that this could go awry very quickly and spin out of control and become violent. We're very, very concerned about that. So immediately after, and I pointed out last week that the spies episode is not without its violence. The people want to stone Caleb and Yehoshua. They are tempted. It's just right at the precipice of becoming violent. Here, though, you don't get that sense that it's at that point. But as we all know, that point could come without any kind of warning. This verse 3 picks up on this, and it says, and here, this is why scholars get a little, concerned, because verse 2, it says they gang up against Moses. In verse 3, it's they gang up on Moses and Aaron. Okay? So what is their claim, or what are they going to say? Vayomru alehem, they say to them, Rav lachem, yichol ha'edah kulam kidoshim, uvutocham Adonai, umadua titnasu al kal Adonai. So they really have three questions, or three parts here. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said, then you have gone too far, for all the community holy, all of them, and the Lord is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation? Okay, in other words, Korah and these people are making a petition or a demonstration or a stand before Moses. They have made claims, and we'll examine the claims in a minute. And they are challenging Moses's authority and Aaron's authority here. Okay, it's very clear that what they want is really Aaron's position, but that'll be clear later on in the text. I don't even think I have that. Maybe I have it later on. All right, so I want to zoom in on who was Korah, because the text does identify him. It identifies him in a textual way. You know, we had this conversation a while back on the visual presentation of information, and the Torah doesn't use charts, but we will have a chart here in a second. Korah is a firstborn to the secondborn of a secondborn of a thirdborn. Korah is to Izhar what Aaron is to Amram. Korah is to Aaron what and Moses and Miriam's first cousin. Okay, and here's the chart. And I want to spend some time looking at this chart because I think it's really, really important. Okay, so we have Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob, as you recall, has 12 sons: Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Baba Yehuda, and the others. Levi is the third son. Why is Levi singled out? Levi is singled out because the tribe of Levi did not get involved at the golden calf. Because of that, they have a special status as agents. And as I argued elsewhere, originally, biblical Israel was probably organized around having the firstborn sons be involved as priests or servants within the sacred areas. But as everyone realizes, when you take away the firstborn, you insult and injure the family systems. You create a tremendously inefficient way of transmission of tradition and knowledge. And it is a much more efficient way to have it within one family and have the profession of priesthood and the profession of the Levitical tasks organized in a family/guild manner. And that's what Levi becomes. And so Levi is taken out of the tribal union, and instead of Levi, you have it's Levi and Joseph are taken out of the tribal union. The tribes consist of 12. You subtract 2, Levi and Joseph, and you add 2, Manasseh and Ephraim, the tribes of Joseph, Joseph's sons, and you're back to 12. 12 is the magic number of units within a federation. Why that is a good question. That's, you know, how the ancient world was structured. You can see it elsewhere in biblical stories that 12 is the symbolic number for a nation, 12 units. Okay, and the people proceeds with a different set of tribes, the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim substituting for Levi and Joseph. Here is Levi's dynasty. So there are 3 branches, 3 main branches of families within the household of Levi: Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. All right, these are the 3 sons of Levi. Gershon is the firstborn, Kohat is the secondborn, and Merari is the thirdborn. Just as for parenthetical, we need to understand that each one of these branches or clans of Levi, the Gershonites, the Kohatites, and the Merarites, had specific obligations within the transportation of the tabernacle. So here on this chart, it says that the Gershonites were the ones responsible for transporting and maintaining the woven materials, the Kohatites, the vessels, and the Merarites, the wooden parts, the beams and the sockets, etc. So each clan basically took responsibility for its section. The Gershonites took all the coverings. The Kohatite took the ark and the the menorah and all the tables and the vessels, all the apparatus, and the Merarites took all the beams. The Kohathites seem to have the most important role in the family structure and seem to have the most amount of privilege in terms of the responsibility. In fact, look down now at who is a Kohathite. Kohathites consists of Amram family, the Yitzhar family, the Hebron family, and the Uziel family. So there are 4 sons of Kohath. These are 4 grandchildren of Levi: Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Okay, Hebron we don't know about. Uziel is mentioned elsewhere in the story. I think it's with regard to Nadav and Avihu, if I'm not mistaken. But we got to focus on Amram here. Amram, we don't have in the wife here. He's married to Yocheved, and Amram has 3 children: Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. The oldest Aaron, the youngest Moses. Miriam, who is a significant figure in her own right. Okay, and then going over to Yitzhar, you got Korah, Nepheg, and Zichri. These are his 3 sons. And then you go to Uziel, and you got Mishael, Eltzaphan, and Sitri. And these really don't rate, okay? In fact, Nepheg and Zichri don't rate. They're just listed elsewhere. But you can see, just looking at this chart, that the 3 sons, with the exception of Hebron, they have a lot in common. Amram, Yitzhar, and Uziel, they each have 3 children. Here it's 2 sons and a daughter, but they all have 3. So the relationship between Korah and Moses is that Korah is Moses's first cousin. Okay, Korah is Aaron's first cousin. All right. So here, what does Korah want? So I'm offering that he wants at least 4 things. He wants the office. He wants the power. He wants the honor. He wants all the trappings of this, and he wants the emoluments. The emoluments meaning that there are certain prerogatives that the high priest and the priest's family gets, and I could add number E here, which is, if you are the head of the Kohanim, you're set for eternity, right? You have a dynasty that is related to you. So Korah wants essentially to have Aaron's job, okay? And he says he is making the claim in the following ways. Let me just, I have a set of comments here on this. No, I think I got rid of them. How do you like that? Okay. Oh no, here they are. Okay, well, we'll go through them this way. So he structures his claim as follows. He appeals to fairness. He says, Rav lachem, you have too much. Back to his claim up above, he says to Moses, Rav lachem, you have too much. You and Aaron have too much. Why in this organization here, you, Moses, are leader, and Aaron is high priest. Everything went to your family. You have too much. And basically he's saying, look, I'll take the priesthood. You can have the leadership. He's really, challenging Moses as well. But he's saying, you have too much. It's an appeal to fairness. Everything has been invested in your family, and why should your family get all the spoils of leadership? This is Rashi. Harbe yoter midai lekachtem la'atzmechem gedulah. You have taken too much of for yourselves gedulah. Lachem is a reference to Moses and Aaron. The 2 of you have too much. You, Moses, have the leadership of the people, and you, Aaron, have the priesthood. Why should both the leadership and the priesthood be trusted to one branch of the Kohats? Why do the Amrams get both offices? It's not fair. Moses, you keep the leadership and give the priesthood to me. According to Ibn Ezra, again, Rav Lachem is Kimodai Lachem. It's like saying you have enough. Vatam you took the greater share. You took this glory because you were the ones who said that Aaron and his sons would be Kohanim. The clothing of gold, precious stones, and jewels were made for them by the community for glory and splendor. And the entire people is subservient to them with 24 gifts of the priesthood. This is Bechor Shor who's commenting on it. Lakachta hagdula azot she'atem omrim Aaron v'anam yu kohanim v'asulayim bigdei zahav. What he's kind of giving us a little bit of insight. He's saying, you want nice clothes. You want the trappings of the leadership. You want, what the Kohanim do is they have a special garb, they have jewelry, they have all of these kinds of things, and you want it all for yourself. And that's not fair. Why are you entitled to that? And so his claim is a claim of fairness. It's not fair that you got everything and I got nothing. Then he's making an appeal to the logic of equality, which is we're all holy. Kichol haida kulam kedoshim. For all the community, all of them are holy. In other words, if we're all holy, then why should anybody be holier than thou? Right? Why should anybody be leader? There's a certain logic to that claim. He appeals to the logic of equality, access to God, which is his claim, Uvitocham Adonai, and God is in their midst. He's saying everyone has, close to God. So if the Kohanim are using their role to help agency, to demonstrate agency to God, that doesn't make any sense because we all have access to God. If all of us have equal access to God, then why should they have control of that access? In other words, it's an argument that is a very logical argument, and it goes to, I guess, the heart of religious establishment. When people, you hear this all the time, and it drives me crazy when I hear this, when people say, I'm not, I believe in God, I just don't believe in organized religion. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear that. It's I can say in a class like this, it's a kind of silliness that has infected a generation of people, maybe generations of people. I don't believe in organized religion, right? That the logic of that claim is, religion is individual, it's personal. Nobody should tell you what to believe. No one should, there shouldn't, make structures for this and all of that. God is for everybody. God is free, and we shouldn't have to, create any kind of structures. And once you create structures and organizations around this, then you putrefy it, or you pollute it, and you make it susceptible to things like, infighting, pettiness, and politics. Okay. Now, of course, those are legitimate claims. We can all criticize our organizations for, sometimes being off their mission. But religion is the only area within human culture and human civilization that is subject to this criticism, right? I don't believe in organized religion. Well, do you like to play sports? Do you like exercise? I don't believe in organized sport. Do you like music? I don't believe in organized orchestras. Do you like museums? I don't believe, do you like art? It's a kind of silly argument, because anything that promotes the advancement of human civilization needs to be organized. We can't have knowledge without organizing a way to disseminate knowledge. You just can't acquire that on your own without some kind of structure. And unfortunately, with structures comes, all of the trappings that exist. But if the aim of a society, at least the biblical society, is to be connected to God. In some way, it has to be organized around this. And organization requires both institutions and administrations and individuals that are responsible for that. And so, in a way, Korah's argument, while logical and compelling, is facile. All right. So that the claim "B'tocham Adonai" means we all have equal access to God. Why should you be more entitled to it than me? Moses' reaction, by the way, is just total exasperation. I'm not going to go into that. His punchline, Korah's punchline on Moses is, "Madua titnasu al kala." Why are you lording over? Why are you raising yourselves up over the congregation? Why did you take this responsibility for yourselves? Okay? So, Korah's claim is that Moses and Aaron have instituted this. They are the ones who have determined the political and religious structure, not God. The rebellion challenges the legitimacy of their leadership. You have chosen yourselves. We certainly have not chosen you. What entitles you to the leadership? So on the one hand, you could see that there is a piece of logic in Korah's argument. Of course, it's a very, very thin argument. And in Midrashim, the rabbis pick up on this. They pick up on the sense of logic, but the logic is also dictated by his personal animus and a sense of jealousy. Okay? So I want to go into this question number 4, which is, why does Korah think he's entitled to make this claim? And here I'm going to go wildly speculative. And I have not seen this anywhere, and feel free to challenge me on this, because it's I don't know if I wouldn't say this is a half-baked idea, but I'm baking this idea, and I want to see what you think. Okay, my speculation is that there's something going on in the Torah with regard to the seconds. The seconds in Breshit are all the preferred. Back to Cain and Abel. You recall Adam and Eve have 2 sons, Cain and Abel. Cain brings his offering of potatoes, and Abel brings his offering of the first of the sheep. God prefers Abel's offering. God pays attention to Abel's offering. It may not be in the sense of quote unquote preferred, but in a sense, because the younger usurps the role, gets focused on prior to the older. We see that the Bible has at least the Torah at the beginning has a predilection towards the younger. And there may be something going on here in terms of the Torah's sustained argument against primogeniture, that is to say, the prerogatives of the first. And this is the Torah's sustained argument against nature. The real debate is, what determines the outcome in reality, God or nature? If it's nature, then whatever nature produces gets priority. If it's God, whatever God chooses or whoever God chooses gets priority. And so the Torah overwhelmingly, as far as the book of Breshit is concerned, chooses the latter over the former, the younger over the elder, even though even within natural societies and organic civilization, even down to this day, we all show, I don't want to say preference to the firstborn, but the firstborn has a certain status really all the way up to modern times. Look, still in dynastic systems, the firstborn is the one that takes over. You find dynastic systems within the monarchy, and you find a dynasty within, let's say, Hasidic culture. In Hasidic culture, who becomes the Rebbe after the previous Rebbe passes away. It's usually the firstborn. There are, of course, many exceptions to this, especially when the firstborn is not capable or not willing or doesn't exist. In the case of the Lubavitcher Hasidic dynasty, you might recall that Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, was not the firstborn of his predecessor. He actually was his son-in-law. The Menachem Schneerson was the son-in-law of the previous. He married the daughter of the previous Rebbe. But in general, rabbinic dynasties went by firstborn, and as I said, there are exceptions. And the Bible doesn't make that sense. Now, but by the time you get to the Davidic kingdom, you are getting a dynasty, and of course, that's where all the problems happen. You look at the house of David, and you see that David himself has all his children fight against one another for the throne. They have rebellions, and he hands the kingdom to Solomon, but that's an overstatement. He hands the kingdom to Solomon because of the queen mother Bathsheba. Bathsheba, and here you have to really give the Bible a lot of credit for investing power to the woman. Because of Bathsheba, Bathsheba steers the kingdom of David from David's other children to Solomon, and this is also at the behest of Nathan the prophet. We have to study this at some point. It's a fascinating, the beginning of this is in the end of Samuel, and how the kingdom gets transferred to Solomon. Let's not underestimate the role of Bathsheba in that. But by and large, the Bible, is preferring seconds. Look at this: Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael is the first son of Abraham, but Isaac is the first son of Sarah. It doesn't matter. He's the second son of Abraham. Isaac is preferred. Esau and Jacob. Jacob is born after Esau. Esau puts out is born first, and Jacob is born holding on to Esau's ankle. Leah and Rachel. Rachel is the one that's preferred by Jacob. She is the second. So you have all of that really establishing itself as a pattern within Genesis. Who are the sons of Jacob? You recall there are Leah tribes, the four sons of Leah, in the first round: Bilhah, Dan, and Naphtali, Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. Leah is the second round, Issachar and Zvulun, and then Dinah, who doesn't really count, sorry. And Rachel has Joseph and Benjamin. So here's where we get interesting complications. The sons of Jacob throw everything into this whole system into a bit of a puzzle. Reuben is the firstborn, but Joseph is the one that Jacob loves. Now, Joseph is loved because he's the firstborn of Rachel, but he is also the youngest. He's the youngest until Benjamin is born. Benjamin is not born until several years after Joseph. We don't really know the difference in age between Joseph and Benjamin, but we are led to believe that Benjamin is really a little kid, okay? When Joseph is 17, Benjamin is probably maybe a couple years old. This is, just after the death of Rachel. Benjamin has no personality, and nothing is. When the Joseph story starts, Benjamin is not really in there. When the brothers go off to tend the sheep in Shechem, I have to do some more investigation about this, but Joseph is dispatched to go after his brothers, and we're led to believe that it's 10 brothers and not 11 brothers. Joseph's at home. Benjamin is is born, but Benjamin's probably a little boy at this time. He's not off with his brothers. That's, for me, it's a puzzle. I'll have to find some more commentary or midrashim on that. So if this system is maintained, Joseph is really the youngest until Benjamin, and Joseph is preferred. In this system, Levi becomes the head of a new dynasty. Levi, if Levi is the head of a dynasty, then Levi is like Abraham. Kohat would be like Isaac. Yitzhar would be like Jacob. Korah, the firstborn of Yitzhar, would be like Joseph. Okay, I'll go back to the chart. It's easier to see it this way. Okay, all right. If we are saying that the second is the one that is, preferred, Kohat is second to Levi, Yitzhar is second to Kohat, Korah is first to Ishar, which is like saying Isaac is second to Abraham, Jacob is second to Isaac, and Joseph is first to Yitzhar. Okay. Now I realize that I'm making a stretch here. Okay.
Stretch.
I'm stretching. Okay, I realize that, and I can handle the challenge. I can handle the challenge. What I'm trying to say is that the fact that my argument is a stretch signifies to me that whatever you try to do to justify the claim for leadership is flimsy, based on the fact that the only reason why Moses and Aaron are leaders has nothing to do with this. It has, because God chose them. That's all. It's the only reason why Moses and Aaron are leaders is because God chose them. So I can invent, and I've tried to invent this to me is a compelling rationale, although it doesn't go all the way. I can try and invent as compelling a rationale as possible to ask what's in his mind, right? Why does he think he's entitled? He could have said, he could suffice only with the logical argument, which is you're all holy, God's with us. Who made you holier? Who made you godlier? I'm entitled to, I should have it. That's a claim. But if you can push it a little bit, just get imaginative and say, look, okay, so this is, I've read the Torah, I know the tradition, and Yitzchak is over Yishmael, Yaakov is over Esav, Joseph is over Reuben. I should be over Aaron and Moses. It all works, okay? There's no reason why we should go to the firstborn of Kohat. There's no reason why we should go to the firstborn of Amram, because Aaron is the firstborn of Amram. I am the firstborn of Yitzhar. There's no reason why it shouldn't be me, okay? I mean, it's, as I say, it's a flimsy argument, but it's, I don't have to tell you, we're living in an age where people make arguments based on a set of facts that are lies. Okay, you could make the claim. I don't want to get too political, but we can say, if we put up in front of the population the idea, quote, that the election was stolen, people will believe it, right? Because the claim has it to some people, it will have a resonance of truth to it, no matter what the facts are. Okay, and this is the point. The point of a charlatan, or the point of someone like Korah, is saying they're lined up this way, the facts are lined up this way, and I'm going to manipulate the facts to produce a claim that has cogency to it. And I'm going to go, and you're going to follow my claim. And of course, what they're really after is power. What they're really after is the leadership. And they're trying to base that on both logic and also opportunity. Okay, going back to this. So I made my stretch here, and the point of the stretch is he's trying to hang on some kind of claim. So let me ask you this question. If he wants power, why isn't he just stage a coup? Why doesn't he just murder Moshe or Aaron? I mean, wouldn't that have been simpler?
Then we wouldn't have a story.
Then we wouldn't have a story. That's correct. I always get to that answer, by the way. But so I want to go, here I want to, I want to get into the mind of this character and make it real. Julius Caesar in the play, from what I recall, I didn't read it before this class, but so Brutus kills Caesar, and why does Brutus kill Caesar? Because Caesar's a tyrant, and Brutus wants to stage a coup. In most political overthrows, it happens because someone takes power and violently overthrows the person who was previously in power, either by murder or by arrest or by some other means. Okay, and we can find other all sorts of different examples of this. Egypt had a recent example of this. Cuba had examples of this. Lots of Latin American countries had examples of this. There were attempts at coups. In Turkey a couple of years ago, there was an attempted coup overthrow. A lot of African countries have overthrows and coups, and they all happen with a little bit of violence. The problem here is he wants to be the priest. You can't be a priest and commit violence. If all you want is the power and the trappings of power and the ability to control access to God and the ability to, create the ritual life of the community and have it depend on you, and you really can't commit a murder doing that. I speculate here, I don't want to be silly about this, but he doesn't want to violate one of the Ten Commandments. I mean, he understands that even in the covenantal situation, he has to adhere to the covenant, and that by violating "Thou shalt not murder," he would be disqualified to be the leader. So he's in an interesting circumstance, Korah. He wants political power, but he has very little means of achieving that short of, a popular insurrection. And he can't murder because that will disqualify him. So he has to appeal to Moses. It doesn't say that he's appealing to the people here, and he's not. The scene at the beginning of the Parasha is not, I assembled 250 people on the mall and said, "Are you with me?" And let's go. He doesn't do that. He's going straight to Moses himself and doing this. Okay. I think also there's something to be said for the fact that Korach believes that he has a legitimate claim. He has convinced himself that he is right, and this is I think something that is unique to a certain kind of politician. A certain kind of politician believes in himself so much that no matter what the limitations of the situation are, I am right, and doggone it, I am right, and you are wrong, and you're not entitled to it, and I'll do whatever I can, short of murder, to achieve my ends. Susie, go ahead.
So two things. One is it could be possible that, as you said, he doesn't want to violate the Ten Commandments, but with all the problems that Bnei Israel had at that point, they may have been a more stable structure than some of these South American or African countries. Not with albeit. The other things I heard in a Dvar Torah early this morning, Somebody took the words, Rav Lachem. He took the Rav part of it. He said, people always want more. It's like, living up to the Joneses or getting, and, he didn't say it in those words, but it was kind of, Ezehu Ashir Hasameach Bechalkom.
Yeah.
That, we have to learn from this. It's like, having more isn't going to make you happy. It's, this is somebody who's just discontented, and he thinks that having more power is going to.
I agree with you. I think, there, Korah has a sense of self and is constructing an image of himself that he needs to, that he wants to kind of move into, and he needs the apparatus around him to enable him to do that. He wants to usurp Moses. He wants to usurp Aaron because he feels that he himself is entitled for one or any other reasons. I put out, a hardly plausible reason, but it could have been like anything else. Okay. All right. So the means of attaining power through murder and violence are not available to him because they would immediately disqualify him, and they would defeat him. Okay. He would lose total legitimacy. Okay. So why doesn't Moses have him killed or jailed?
Because he's smart.
What's that?
He's smart.
He's smart, but I think that, and Moses is deeply frustrated at this situation, but I can put on a kind of legal hat, like, because Korah says it's not a violation of the law. There's no law, there's no constitution yet in biblical Israel of what leadership is. Leadership is obtained through God. God said, Moses, you're a leader, basically, and Moses is a leader. God said, Moses, designate Aaron, and that's what it is. It's all because of God. There's no law, there's no constitution that says you are elected, or there's nothing that defines the political structure of ancient Israel other than prophet and high priest. But
Korah is making it personal, and Moshe is making it not personal. It's like, I'm not going to argue with me, say I'm I'm the leader. It's like okay, you think you want to be, so let's let God decide.
Right. So it's Moses is taking it out of the realm of the personal. Exactly. Well, I have a few other answers here, because there is no law. We have seen already in the case of the wood gatherer this past Shabbat, and in the book of Vayikra, the blasphemer. Both of these cases, they have to be adjudicated. There are laws, but the sentencing of these laws is something that Moses has to ask for. So there is no law about what do you do if someone challenges your leadership. So Moses is functioning within a legal framework and can't appeal to anything legal. I would say, because while this is a political problem for Moses, it is a challenge to divine authority, and Moses appeals to divine authority. What's really happening here is that Korah is challenging God, not Moses. While he's putting the challenge to, why do you lord yourselves over us? The challenge is really, why, God, did you choose them over me? And so because of that, Moses gets to punt it to God and say, you're going to adjudicate this for me. Moses is also bound to the law of 10 commandments. He's not going to murder Korah. And Moses has a better plan, the fire pan plan. Why does Moses like to have Korah subjected to an ordeal? And what's the ordeal? So here's the text. Then he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, come morning, the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and will grant him access to himself. He will grant access to the one he has chosen. Do this. You, Korah, and all your band, take fire pans, and tomorrow put fire in them and lay incense on them before the Lord. Then the man whom the Lord chooses, he shall be the Holy One. You have gone too far, sons of Levi. What is he saying here? He's saying, go get your spatulas, go get your shovels, your incense shovels, and put some incense on them, and put fire, and we'll see what happens. And put fire on them. Get a coal, and sorry, just a second, and you'll put some fire on it, and then we'll see what happens. Okay. Well, what does that remind you of? it should remind you of the story of Nadav and Avihu. This should remind them what happens when the wrong people encroach the tabernacle under the wrong circumstances with incense and fire. Recall Nadav and Avihu. Here's the Nadav and Avihu. Aaron sent Nadav and Avihu, each took fire pan, put fire and laid incense on it, and they offered before the Lord alien fire, which he had not enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed them. They died the incense of the Lord. In other words, while they're not being told here to put strange fire on it and to, Nadav and Avihu, we talked about this at length that week. What they did was they went too far. They violated the boundaries. What Moses is saying here is, look, I want you to do this. You recall that when we did this, something happened. So if God wants you, then you should be able to withstand this challenge, okay? So do the same thing that they did. They were rejected because they were all incinerated. And if God chooses you, God won't incinerate you, okay? I think that was brilliant. It's a brilliant plan. So if Korah knows what happens when the wrong people bring incense, why doesn't he call it off? Right? He doesn't have a chance. He knows that he's going to get killed. Why doesn't he say it? So I answer, because like all charlatans, populists, and carpetbaggers, he's convinced that he's right. Second, he'd rather die than look like a coward, which is what a fool does. And then the third is the die is cast. He has no choice, right? He really pinned himself in a corner. He has no choice. So why does Moses schedule the ordeal for tomorrow? Well, because it raises suspense. Because in many of the plagues, he warns Pharaoh that the plague will come tomorrow, which is, an allusion to calamity. Because like Aaron and the golden calf, he's reminding them that he is a rebellion and that will end in catastrophe. Aaron said, Chag Ladunai Machar, is a festival to God tomorrow. And what happens tomorrow is that there's devastation. And so what Moses is telegraphing to Korah is, you still have time. You have time to repent. You have time to get back. That would be a very gracious interpretation here to Moses, which is by saying, come tomorrow for this, he is giving them a chance for an exit. And he is trying to prevent what he knows will be a catastrophe. Right? I think this is the ultimate brilliance in the generosity of a secure leader. A leader who is secure understands that you are bound to fail, but you have yourself to blame if you fail. I am giving you every opportunity to change. I'm giving you every opportunity to correct your path. But ultimately, this is your responsibility. And so that's what Moses does. Now I want to ask the following question. So what kind of man or politician is Korah? So let me stop for a second, and I want to bring up a different text here. And this you'll enjoy. This is called the 5 archetypes of politicians. Okay, we have to read. This is one person. I don't know the writer of this, but he says there are 5 different types of people who become politicians, or who there's the joker, the messiah, the outsider, the technocrat, and the rebel. This was written a few years ago. Okay, and you can see he's saying that politicians fit into these categories more or less. Archetypes is a tricky business to fit anyone in an archetype because obviously people overlap. But just give you an example. So he has Boris Johnson as an example of a joker, right? And Ronald Reagan. What are the strengths? Optimistic, able to project confidence and warmth. Desire for popularity usually leads to poor decision making. Joker types are almost invariably larger than life characters, feel good politicians who tend to be more like celebrities and entertainers than statesmen. I'm not sure I would agree that Boris Johnson is that, but take this, we're taking this with a grain of salt. I'm just going to go through this quickly. The Messiah archetype. Trust me, I'm here to save you, right? So he puts Churchill and Putin and Obama in this category. There's something to be said for the leader as savior, although I have a much more positive, appreciation of Winston Churchill, and I wouldn't put Churchill and Putin in the same category no matter what. But it's clear that certain politicians have a savior type of mentality, and that is an archetype. Next one, the rebel. You know who? Donald Trump, Bob Muldoon, Margaret Thatcher. These are rebels. In some way, I would disagree with it. I would say there's more of an outsider archetype here, and certainly the populist. But we'll talk about that in a second. The technocrat. We don't have to go into that. These are people who know the system, right? George H.W. Bush was a perfect example of that. Highly intelligent, competent, rational, excellent decision makers. And the outsider. These are British examples. So these are different archetypes, okay?
And you were in Highland Park?
The idea, what's useful about something like this is that it poses the question, which is, does Korah fit within an archetypal mold or frame as a politician? Okay, let me go back to my text here. All right, just a second, because there is some conversation about Korah as a populist. So this was the 5 archetypes. We went through that briefly, and here's some pictures. This is Korah as populist. So Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes in his last book, published right after he died, or after he died, populism is the politics of anger. It makes its appearance when there is widespread discontent with political leaders, when people feel the heads of institutions are working in their own interest rather than that of the general public, when there is a widespread loss of trust and a breakdown of the sense of the common good. Here we can go back to the beginning of the talk. Basically, there is a moment where the people are in despair. There's discontent. The end of the Spies episode is a tremendous demoralized moment. The people are in discontent. They feel that nothing is working for them. They feel that their interests are not being met. They're not being taken care of. They have to eat manna all day. They can't eat. They are passive to God's, munificence. They have to eat only at the, at the miraculous manifestation of God's beneficence. They get water only by a miracle. They want their own dignity. They want to be taken care of. They want a leader, and they don't want to be aimless and wandering in the desert. It's precisely at that moment that they are susceptible to the politics of anger, to populism. Okay? Now, we are in that moment. We are in this kind of moment politically where nothing seems to be going right, and we have seen, how powerful that is and how dangerous that is. I think, what we have experienced, and I think to a certain extent continue to experience, and what is certainly being experienced in Israel now, you can sense it's not even under the surface in a shallow way, it's almost at the surface. The populist anger is there. The potential for danger and violence is right at the surface. That's why there is tremendous alarm. Sachs, in another article, suggests the following, that there's a different archetype, and that what Korah does is establish the anti-leader archetype, or the person who's only interested in the self, even though I would say that he's deluded by his sense of both what is owed to him and his sense that he can deliver for the people, even though he's motivated by the quest for power and the emoluments of office. Here's what Sachs writes about Moses and Korah. What exactly was wrong in what Korah and his motley band of fellow agitators said? We know that Korah was a demagogue, not a Democrat. He wanted power for himself, not for the people. We know also that the protesters were disingenuous. Each had their own reasons to feel resentful toward Moses or Aaron or fate. Set these considerations aside for a moment and ask what they said, true or false. They were surely right to say all the congregation is holy. That, after all, is what God asked the people to be, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, meaning a kingdom of all whose members are priests and a nation of all of whose citizens are holy. They were equally right to say God is with them. That was the point of making the tabernacle. Skip. What was wrong was their last remark. Why then do you set yourselves above God's congregation? This was not a small mistake. It was a fundamental one. Moses represents the birth of a new kind of leadership. That is what Korah and his followers did not understand. Many of us do not understand it still. The most famous buildings in the ancient world were the Mesopotamian ziggurats and Egyptian pyramids. These were more than just buildings. They were statements in stone of a hierarchical social order. They were wide at the base and narrow at the top. The top was the king or pharaoh at the point, so it was believed, where the heaven and earth met. Beneath was a series of elites, and beneath them, the laboring masses. This was believed to be not just one way of organizing society, but the only way. The very universe was organized on this principle, as was the rest of life. The sun ruled the heavens, the lion ruled the animal kingdom, the king ruled the nation. That is how it was in nature. That is how it must always be. Some are born to rule, others to be ruled. Judaism is a protest against this kind of hierarchy. Every human being, not just the king, is in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, no one is entitled to rule over any other without their assent. There is still a need for leadership, because without a conductor, an orchestra would lapse into discord, like organized religion. Without a captain, a team might have brilliant players and yet not be a team. Without generals, an army would be a mob. Without government, a nation would lapse into anarchy. In a social order in which everyone has equal dignity in the eyes of heaven, a leader does not stand above the people. They serve the people and they serve God. The great symbol of biblical Israel, the menorah, is an inverted pyramid or ziggurat, broad at the top, narrow at the base. The greatest leader is therefore the most humble. Moses was very humble. The name given to this is servant leadership, and its origin is in the Torah. The highest accolade given to Moses is that he was the servant of the Lord. Moses is given this title 18 times in the Tanakh. Only one other leader merits the same description, Joshua, who is described this way twice. No less fascinating is the fact that the only person in the Torah is commanded to be humble, namely the king, etc. So that's the idea. The idea is that the Torah is presenting a political philosophy that is in itself a revolution against the political philosophy of the ancient world, and to a certain extent the political philosophy that exists in tyrannical totalitarian regimes, which is the leader sits on the top of the pyramid, is at the apex of the hierarchy, and controls and rules the leader, the people. Whereas the political philosophy given to us by the Bible, that imprints itself on Western civilization, is a political philosophy of the ascent of the governed. That is to say, the leader is a servant to the people and not the totalitarian dictator of the people. Now, of course, leaders who are servants of the people can sometimes veer into that territory. These are not static categories. But Moses, sees himself, and certainly the tradition sees Moses as the servant leader, servant to God and servant to the people, and bound by the law and not the originator of the law. God is the originator of the law. And from this, we get, I think, the beginnings of constitutional political philosophy. At least, I think we can make the connection between the political philosophy of the Bible to its descendants in the Western democratic political tradition. And that
Rabbi, I think that'd be a great PhD, wouldn't it?
It's been done. I have the book. The book is, the writer is Yoram Hazony, and he's written a book called The Political Philosophy of the Bible. I didn't really look at it in terms of this particular case, but that's the case that scholars like he make, which is that the Bible itself is the cornerstone of the Western political tradition. That's what we would say. Anyway, what we have there is just a fascinating, as I say, it's different. It's a very difficult story to grasp. I think for me, it's one of the most difficult moments in the Torah, because you go like, what is going on here? What's happening? It's complicated on so many levels, and yet at the end, it's telling you, here's a man who wants only power, only the emoluments of power, the trappings of power, and doesn't really understand what power is. And the message then is, power is to serve. And power is to serve a higher ideal and not the self. And when we can learn that lesson, I think the Bible becomes a much more engaging and enriching, text for us to understand the world and what we have contributed to the political philosophy in the world. Any other comments?
In the Midrash, he learns that in the end, when he's going around and around in circles in Sheol and saying Moshe.
That's right. I love that line. It's a beautiful Midrash. One second, Bob. It's a beautiful Midrash. It says there's a rabbi he's a wonderful storytelling rabbi, and he says, I went to the place where Korah is buried. I put my ear to the ground. And then, what did you hear? And he said, they're saying Moses was right and the Torah is right, and we are liars. We were liars. And I use that as a joke to say, what's the definition of hell? The definition of hell is to know, to admit that you're wrong for eternity. That's hell. Bob like.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say that in preparing for this, I also had a chance to listen to a number of Chabad Hasidic perspectives, which I was surprised was much more sympathetic to Korah in terms of things. And they raised the issue of why, first of all, is there a Parasha named after him, much like Yithro has one? Why did he merit something like this? And they went on to talk about the fact that he was an exemplar. Someone said the letters of his name, Korah, was actually a corruption of the Hebrew letter Hey, and showed how these things represented a denial of God, and that the way that arguments took place were not like Hillel and Shammai in the name of God, but this was not the way to resolve the conflicts that go on. And I've just sort of, one of the things that they mentioned was that one of his descendants is Samuel. Yes. And that in fact, maybe they said he was too prophetic for his time, that he was actually thinking too far ahead for people. And much like with the spies, they did not want to engage in the real world. They wanted to engage in the study of Torah in terms of spirituality, and not to engage in the living of life. And Korah was the same. And so that was, it was a fascinating, very different take than I ever seen before on this. So I was wondering on your comments on that, if any.
I don't really have. I mean, obviously, I tend not to go in those directions. I'm looking at the Bible. I'm looking at the Torah. And really trying to go into the stories there without the until of course I need to use them for my own pedagogical points. The you know I, the rabbinic tradition, of course, sees Korah as the archetype of there are arguments for the sake of heaven and arguments that are not for the sake of heaven. L'shem Shemaim, l'shalom l'shem Shemaim. Hillel and Shammai are always trying to argue for truth, and when you are arguing for truth, you have an ultimate moment. It doesn't matter if you're where you are, that you're trying for the same goal. When you're arguing for power, it can defeat you. It will in the end not be sustained. Arguments for truth will last. Arguments that are about power will not last. That's what the rabbis say. And Korah is
just one other comment on that. I don't know if it was Sachs or someone else who said that versus a king and a prophet, power can be a win-lose situation, whereas if you're an influencer, it's like one candle lighting another candle. And Korah was into more of a win-lose situation than really going the other way.
That's true. Yes. Very good. All right. Well,